name is Ashley Morales, and joining me today on Impact Catalyst is Susan Gore, president of the LGBTQ Resource Center in Gulfport. Thank you so much for being here today, Susan.
Thank you for having me.
So what can you tell us about the Resource Center? Will you give us an overview?
Absolutely. We started as a book collection. A person gave 250 books to the library on LGBTQ themes, and the library director and a circle of friends said, we should have a separate collection for this. It has now grown since 2015 to over 10,000 books, CDs, DVDs, and other online materials. And then along the same time, the Resource Center board developed programming that grew in parallel with the book collection. So we have three signature programs. One is Read Out. It's an LGBTQ literary festival that happens every February. Our 7th year is this coming February 16 through 18. We do Art Out, which is a month-long art exhibit. And then we have Speak Out, which is a series of dialogues about the intersection of LGBTQ identity and humanities topics like faith, law, literature. And that's our primary program. We also give 3 $2,000 scholarships because of a partnership with Raymond James Pride Inclusion Network. They raise the money, we give it away, which seems like a great deal for everybody. They sponsor a walk-run 5K once a year in May. And we give out the scholarships to people who are just starting continuing education, retooling and changing, maybe going back to school to get additional certifications. And then the third category is somebody who's been out of school for a while and wants to come back. And the neat thing, in my opinion, about these scholarships, there is no upper age limit. So one of our winners this year is 77 years old, and she's going back to get a certificate in digital media. Okay.
I love that.
And the other thing, is that you can use the funds for any accredited education program. Doesn't have to be a college, junior college. It could be art school, medical studies, occupational training. And that makes us, I think, unique, actually. And we're very pleased to be doing that.
Can you talk a little bit about how the center has evolved over the years since it opened in 2015?
You bet. I would say each of our programs started as a passion project. So Read Out, the literary festival, was started by a board member who happened to be a lesbian author. And she said, let's do a festival. Art Out began because there was a couple, one of whom was on the board, had owned a gallery. And they said, we really think it would make sense to expose people to art by LGBTQ plus artists. And by the way, in both cases, in all of our program, we are inclusive. It is not that you must be LGB or TQ. It's that you relate to the topic from an LGBTQ lens, or the author or artist is LGBTQ. Speak Out similarly. It's my passion. I was a college professor in my first career, so dialogue and talking about ideas is what makes me happy.
How many LGBTQ members do you work with per year? And can you speak to the impact the center has had on the local LGBTQ community?
That's an interesting question. Until recently, we really didn't track by zip code. But now that we've just started writing grants, we've discovered we need that information. We have a mailing list of almost 2,500 people, but they're not all Pinellas County or Gulfport. Again, when COVID happened, we went online, and Read Out went from 150 people packing the library with 25 authors. We were very, very pleased, to 1,000 people from 22 countries. It was like, oh my God, the gift we never asked for, but COVID forced us. It was either expand online or close up shop. And what we discovered is the need is tremendous all over the world. We still are very Gulfport centric. We are doing 2 programs at the library, for example, in the month of December. We will continue to do programming through the library, but theirs is the book collection and our part is the events.
So why is it important to not only to have, these important materials, but to be so visible and active in the community?
The short answer is it makes me happy. I'm somebody who is, I would say, an immersive person. I write checks, but really I'm a doer. So personally, I get such pleasure out of connecting with people who are doing good work and connecting people together who can do great work together. And I think not everybody feels they have that privilege to be as open. And I'm retired. What are they going to do? Nobody's going to fire me. In the state of Florida, we are at a moment when it's really important for queer people to be visible. And I think the other piece that I appreciate about the Resource Center is we are not a lobbying organization. We're an educational organization. We're arts and humanities. So we try to focus on the contributions and celebrate LGBTQ themes instead of marching in the streets, for example. So that's my long-term goal. I'm always going to be an educator.
That was something I wanted to ask you about, something that you touched on. Recent legislation in Florida has prompted civil rights groups and the nation's largest LGBTQ advocacy group to warn against traveling to Florida. What do programs like yours and the fact that the Resource Center is, such a big part of the community and is growing exponentially, what would you say to those who call Florida hostile towards those who identify as LGBTQ?
My experience is that it's a both and. Yeah, those laws are hostile and, in my opinion, unconstitutional. And the legal process will sort that out over time. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, telling parents that want their children to be exposed to a wide range of literature that they cannot, eliminating sociology as a class, a required class in the college level, just blows my mind. That is censorship that is authoritarian. Again, from an educator's point of view. At the same time, I will tell you, Gulfport has been phenomenally supportive, and there are wonderful people here, and there are wonderful people everywhere. So although it is true that the state legal system is not our friend right now, it is also true that there are many people, in fact, some who are coming to read out specifically because of the discriminatory laws, to say, we're not going away. We're not going to be invisible.
Can you expand a little bit on why it is important to have the Resource Center programs inclusive? You mentioned that earlier.
Sure. Well, I always say we don't do bed checks, for one thing, so who knows whose. But it's about educating beyond just an echo chamber. We want to talk to the entire audience, the entire population, because you may be a parent of a gay child. You may have a brother or sister who's LGBTQ. And wouldn't you want to know more about what their life is like, what their options are, and what makes them unique? So it makes no sense. We keep drawing our circle bigger.
Do you have plans for growth for the Resource Center in the future?
We are at an interesting hub right now. It's really only become clear over the past year that our focus is arts and humanities. I mean, we did programming. This is the 7th year for our signature art out and read out programs. But we really just have focused now that that's our niche. And as best I can tell, we are the only overtly LGBTQ organization in Pinellas County that focuses on arts and humanities. So clearly there's a need. The growth with COVID showed how much of a need there was that has been untapped. And the other thing about online access, in my opinion, there are people who simply don't want to go out at night, don't feel comfortable driving. In some cases, there are people who don't feel safe going to a gay event, and being online gives them the option of participating in the comfort and the security of their own space.
That's really important. If there's one takeaway you'd like the viewers of this interview to remember or know about the Resource Center, what would it be? Or a few. I know it can be hard to
sorry, there's a phrase, we're here, we're queer, get used to it. But that's so, that's so passé. I think that the takeaway I would want people to have is we are your neighbors, your daughters, your sons, your friends, your dentist, your doctor, your accountant, your truck driver. The thing about being gay or LGBTQ is we fit into every demographic. We are people of color. We are transgender. We are every one of the categories that you can come up with. So if you want to know somebody, and let me say this, sometimes people say, well, I don't need to know who you sleep with. Fair enough. I don't need to know who you sleep with either. But that's not what my identity is only about. It's about my perspective on the world, the ways I have had both challenges and opportunities because of my identity. We want everyone to get the exposure to know us as people.
Well, and especially at a time when, we're seeing that a lot of these civil rights protections, not only are they new, but they're fragile as well.
They are. The Freedom to Marry Act was something I'd never thought I'd see in my lifetime, and now it's likely to be rolled back. I mean, Roe v. Wade was law for decades and has been rolled back. So you have to keep remembering each generation will have to make their statement. And every generation does it differently. I think the brouhaha over transgender athletes is this decade's version of what's new and different that we care about. We people who are LGBTQ. But there's always something new.
Is there anything about the Resource Center that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention or talk more about?
I appreciate that question. I really want people to understand how dedicated the board members are. We are an all-volunteer organization. We hire a consultant to do our website on an hourly basis. But all of these programs that have just exploded have been because of the commitment and dedication of the volunteers. We have grown to a point we have to revisit that. And I don't want to spill beans, but we may be looking at some staffing on an ongoing basis. That takes nothing away from all of the time that the volunteers have given to create this amazing center.
Incredible. Would you say you have a pretty broad age range of people who take part?
We do. In fact, we're having an open mic coming up on the 7th of December, and there will be teenagers. We try to keep things 18 plus and we keep things appropriate. But even so, there will be a lot of younger people at an open mic, as opposed to, say, a dialogue on aging, which we're doing in January at Stetson. So, yeah, we have a wide range. It's interesting. Gulfport has always been known as a lesbian mecca, and we have a lot of gay men who are involved. So we try to cross that boundary as well as color and other demographics. Many of our board members are still full-time employed, and we have to accommodate their needs to have that life as well as do the Resource Center work.
That's wonderful. Well, Susan, is there anything else that you wanted to say that I can, give you the space to talk about before we end our interview?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, we're happy that you joined us today. Thanks, Susan.
Okay. Take care.